Yeah, there we go.
Much better. Always a competition here.
Welcome. This is the Second Opinion Sports Medicine Podcast. We are here in San Diego. I'm with my good friend, Dr. Glass.
Yes, sir.
How are you tonight?
Good. Nice drive down.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've had a couple Zoom sessions, which those are good. I always appreciate the conversations. I've said that before, but I like being in the office with the squad. And, man, we had some interesting NFL games this week, huh?
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, I realized there was a couple records that were set, some not in a good way for certain teams. There was a team that gave up the biggest lead ever, 33-0. So we'll talk about that today. Did you catch that game?
I did not.
You didn't?
No,
okay.
I'm interested in see your recap on that.
Yeah, I'd like to just break that down. That was an interesting back and forth.
That's a brutal loss.
Brutal.
Yeah.
I mean, that's almost like it ruins your momentum for the season. And from the other side of the coin, if you're, well, it was the Colts versus the Vikings. We might as well speak on it.
Yeah, start talking about it now.
And, the Colts were up 33-0 at half. I was out of town. I was driving back, 33-0. Good time to leave, hit the road. I stopped, an hour and a half later to grab some coffee and check the score of the game, and the other team was coming back. And eventually they sent it to overtime. So the Colts ended up losing it in overtime. More importantly, and the reason I bring this game up isn't just for the record, but Jonathan Taylor, the running back, is now out for the season. He re-injured his ankle. High ankle sprain is what they're saying. But like you were speaking on last week, certain injuries that might just be a couple weeks are now out for the season.
Right. Timing's everything.
So that's
too
a
bad.
brutal injury at the end of the year for him.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a plethora of injuries in the NFL, as there are every week. There was a few bunch injuries that we'll talk about. But before we get into all that, I want to see how your week's been and if there's anything new between the last time you were in the office with me and today.
Yeah. Another week down. Trying to think. I know you're going to ask me this every week, and every week when you do, it catches me off guard. I don't know why.
I don't do it at the beginning, middle, or end. It's just random.
Right. So it's kind of funny how the brain works, right?
Yeah.
And then you start like looking over the little Rolodex in your head of trying to figure out, okay, what do we do? But no, there was a lot of good cases I had. A lot of opportunities to help people. I think we talked about last week a couple cases where, start off one way and then it turns out I'm going to be helping with other things. I had a case this week. Well, let's talk about the cases this week.
Sure.
Normally we talk. This is one I'm kind of happy about and excited to have the opportunity. And this is just kind of how the world works. But this one was a referral for hyperbarics.
That's what the person came in for, was hyperbaric.
Yep, got a call, and they
Gotcha.
had gotten my name from another colleague of mine that actually got me into hyperbarics a long time ago. They were at a seminar conference for wellness and mental health. And
if I can interject, not everybody has a hyperbaric chamber. One,
Right.
they're a little bit complicated to use. Two, they're expensive. But I think the fact that you have one in the office is not only good for your health, of course. I know you've used it when you haven't felt 100%, but it's such a benefit for people, and you can't just go to any place to get it, right?
Right. No. They are. They're complicated, yet it's one of the oldest medical devices that has been researched. One of the most researched medical devices, I should say. But not a lot of people have access to it. So that's one of the things that I kind of am grateful for, that I do have access to one. I do own one, and I can help so many people that maybe not have the opportunity to use it. Because usually people that have opportunities are either pro athletes in their facilities or people that are associated with big hospitals or learning centers.
It's not a typical referral thing, right? You're not going to your physical therapist typically and they're saying, go down around the corner to do some hyperbarics.
Correct.
You have to, whoever got the referral was sent in the right direction. They're fortunate, I would say,
Yeah, and this was a case, so kind of two parts to this case, but one, so the child, it's a condition we might see clinically anyways in the early stages, a condition called Scheuermann's disease. And I think you were saying you've had some experience with that.
Yeah, I had early in chiropractic school, one of my patients who actually was my cousin, my younger cousin, came in and we took some x-rays like we normally do in student clinic to do a preliminary examination. Actually, they wanted to get some films taken because he was young in his early teenage years and was growing rapidly, but his parents would always say, sit up straight. Like, you're not sitting up straight. Yeah. My uncle and my aunt, they would...
which is something we commonly hear when the parents come in, right?
You're slouching. Yeah. You need to sit up straight. They have bad posture. So they were constantly telling him that, and he kind of did, right? Like, he'd be doing homework on the couch. He'd be, like a little gargoyle, curled up a bit. But it was because that was comfortable for him. Yeah. And I had just started chiropractic school, and I was probably less than a year in, and he was complaining, gosh, my back hurts. Is there any exercises I can do? And at that point, we're still, I'd gone to undergrad. I was done. I'd gone to graduate school, and then went to chiropractic school. So I felt pretty knowledgeable, but in school they were really like, until you're in clinic, pause on the advice, just, so I kind of took I'm going to be a sponge approach to it. Yeah. And I didn't really give him too much advice, but he came into the clinic because I thought maybe he could use some x-rays. I consulted with one of our doctors there. And so we took some films, and it showed that he had Scheuermann's disease. And so he had an increased curvature of his mid-back, what they call a hyperkyphosis, right? And through a series of adjustments, it was fortuitous for him because we caught it kind of early while he was 13, 14. And I was in school for like almost 4 years. And so during that time, he came in regularly for treatments. And, he's probably 6'1". He's like maybe an inch taller than me, I'd say. And when he got his posture straight, he was kind of looking down at me at one point and was like, hey, I think I'm going to get taller than you. Yeah. And I said, hey, bro, don't get too cocky because I might stop adjusting you and but I do think that it helped his curvature. We were able to get it straighter, So in your case with the patient, tell me about that.
So that's really powerful story. And that Scheuermann's is one of those things that's a self-limiting condition, meaning that it'll progress to a certain point. And that's where you see these individuals really hunched over. So that hunchbacked appearance when you see people out on the street, and it's noticeably like, man, and it's typically the older population that you see really bent over, real hunched over. But when you see it in younger people, then it's alarming. Yeah, it's alarming because typically we don't see it progress like that, right? Alarming. So basically, it's self-limiting, and it's a condition where you're born with, kind of, and it's where the back of the vertebrae, actually, the proportion between the back of the vertebrae and the front of the vertebrae are disproportionate. So the back of the vertebrae is larger than the front of the vertebrae.
So it almost wedges, right?
Yep. And it's in that mid-back area, like you said. So what happens is that, just like building anything, if you're stacking things and then you start wedging a few of them, it's going to start curving, right? Correct. So that's basically what happens. And we skeletally mature typically around 25 years old. So, basically, is that right? I know the brain. I'm so stuck on the 20s. Brain, right? Yeah. Yeah, early 20s. As soon as I said that, I'm like, wait a minute. Yeah, so we're still progressing. And so between the teenage years, that's the most progression that we're going to see. And so a lot of times it starts getting that hump type look. So
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Do you notice, or did you notice any difference when you adjusted that spine? Or did you adjust that spine?
So here's the thing. So in this particular case, I didn't see that. His was so severe, and he was in his teens, that same age, around your cousin, without going into too many specifics, but
sure.
Or just turning teenage, right? Years, it had progressed so much that he ended up having to have surgery for it, and that's where they put the titanium rods in.
That's aggressive.
And, very aggressive. Wow. And those rods are like 1.5 feet long, right? And you're talking about a kid.
That makes me cringe a little bit.
Yeah, right? So this is this family is a very athletic family. So everybody's into very high-level sports in the family. So this is something that they wanted to get corrected early on, right away. So I never got to see it pre-surgery.
I see.
unfortunate thing for this individual is that they also had secondary infection with that,
After
where
the surgery?
so where
Wow.
they've been getting multiple treatments to take care of infection after infection after infection, to where
Was this in the spine or where the surgery occurred?
in the
I guess?
sutures, in the sutures in the spot, and so it was affecting the tissue above and below too, and they just all the wound care that they're doing in the hospital. I mean, they're doing very aggressive treatments in the hospitals, and these are some well-known hospitals.
Yeah.
That I don't want to mention, but
Sure.
that you would think would have this under control, and nothing's working. I mean, and this poor kid, I mean, is going through.
He's so
these
young too. I feel
Yep.
like when things like that happen, if you're a teenager, early in your youth, early 20s, I mean, sometimes being naive about something is a great strength, but I often am like, man, that's so difficult because you're so young. I feel like I have such better mental fortitude. I have such a different outlook now than I did, maybe a decade or two ago. So
for sure.
And, there's a book called Compassionomics is what it's called. And it talks about the scientific evidence behind being compassionate and positive, being a positive thinker and how that has an effect on your healing, And so getting back to what you were saying, that could be so difficult. You could get discouraged. You could get depressed if you come up against these challenges,
right.
And it's not always talked about. You think I'm having this surgery and it's just rehab.
Yep.
At least I don't think it's talked about that much. It wasn't when I had surgery,
right? No, and typically that surgery is pretty straightforward. They're going to put rods in, they're going to pin it, they're going to put hardware in, and it's going to be pretty. As soon as things heal, pretty good. And unfortunately, they're having these negative side effects. So it's a fork in the road. The family and the kid could have two different outcomes mentally with this. Fortunately, this family is unbelievably mentally just they have great attitudes about this. That's kid. If you talk or he sat right here, you wouldn't know he's having any issues, and he's still staying active.
That's good.
He's just having to deal with this wound care on top of it. So
it's difficult too because it's on the back.
Yep.
It's not like your knee or, it's you need help.
Yep. And nobody can see it. So like I said, it'd just be like you looking at me right now. You wouldn't know that they're dealing with that. So they didn't know who I was. They didn't know. They just wanted to try the unit out, the hyperbaric unit, to know if they should, get more involved with hyperbaric, because they haven't been exposed to it. So they came in and we just started talking about all kinds of things, wound care, doing what we do with soft tissue. I really pride myself in helping people with soft tissue injuries, wound care, so I feel like, man, they came to the right place at the right time. I'm here to help them, so I'm really excited. The family's real excited. The mom left.
It's gonna help.
They've referred. She's referred both her sons to me. Her other sons. So I got 3 of the sons, and just for overall wellness, and just the communication part, the education part, and just being able to really help this family out. I'm very grateful and thankful. So that's
important too.
That's what's good this week.
That's
just
great.
The tentacles, because I just ask for the opportunities, right?
Sure.
God, please give me the opportunities to help people, and then let me do the rest type thing. And then so when I get presented with things like this, and I have opportunities, and then I see it it resonates with somebody. Like that's something very special. So
no, it's powerful.
And then it gives me more momentum to seek out the next person to help. So it's a domino effect of helping.
Definitely a domino effect. You never know when you help one person who that one person is going to tell, or it could lead to something. It's like a ripple effect. Like if you throw a rock in a pond type of situation. There's been numerous instances, and I'm sure in your practice, and anyone who's in the medical profession or in the service industry, maybe, a lot of different professions, not just ours, but sometimes you don't expect the little person who is visiting from out of town to be the person to refer multiple people to you, or the one person that is an important person who becomes, kind of an MVP of your clinic, maybe because of their, word of mouth about you, or because of the people they know, or because you're really able to have a success story with that condition. It's not about status or stature. It's like if somebody comes in with a lot of pain and you're able to help them feel better, to that person, that's a big deal.
Yeah, game changer. Well, how you were talking about just the opportunities and things coming together. So we're talking in the consultation, and comes to find out, I don't even know how it got brought up. She's talking about that she was just with Dr. Amen out of state and talking with him and doing, and I'm like, oh, well, I was just at the gala, and she's all, oh, I was supposed to go to that. And we're like, what the heck?
Dang, that's
and she's
crazy.
all, yeah, but my friends went, and which I knew who they were when they were there.
Oh, no way.
So it was just like coming full circle. Oh, yeah, we've done this. I've never met these people. There's no, they live relatively close. They were having trouble finding hyperbarics that they felt comfortable going. So it just was like all these things were coming together. And then when they're leaving and rescheduling, they see my, Play Gigi's Way band, and they personally know a lot of the same people I know through the Lakers, through the families, and it's just all this stuff started trickling.
Hey, man,
and I'm
people
like,
say things are meant to be sometimes.
And that's what I told her. I said, there's a reason why, because then it was an instant connection because we knew a lot of the same people, but we didn't know that. And, so it's pretty special. But
that's special.
It's one of those things you meditate on, you think about, you put out there in the world, in the universe, and you just, it's a pretty special time. So I'm reflecting on that over this week and because you might ask for things or be grateful for things or, meditate or pray on things, but it's another thing once it happens to acknowledge it and don't take it for granted.
Absolutely.
For me.
Or miss it.
Yeah, or miss it.
Sometimes we ask for signs and your eyes are closed, you're not reading, so it's so important to pay attention. Somebody said, I wish I could remember all these little tidbits that are in my head sometimes so I could attribute credit to them. But somebody said, you can approach life in two different ways. I'm paraphrasing. One is to think that everything is a coincidence, and one is to think nothing is a coincidence. I think I might have said that backwards, actually. That nothing is a coincidence and that everything is a coincidence, right? And so I look at those as like little markers in life when there's not just a coincidence of like, hey, I'm thinking of you and you call me, because that happens frequently, and I don't take it for granted, but I'm just like, oh, I'm connected here with this person, right? But I mean more along the lines of, sometimes multiple things happen. Like you meet somebody who knows someone, and then not only that, but you have the conversation about it and the dots get connected. Yeah. That's just a little signal. Yeah. I felt that way about the podcast, like about buying the book for Corey, and then he got to meet Kobe. Those are just like little signposts of like, hey, you're on the right track. Or, if there is some higher spirit or power, it's, if there's a way for them to let you know, hey, this is, like, you're on the right track.
It's going to be okay.
Yeah, that's those are those things. And so I think recognizing it's important. I don't know if I always did, to be quite honest, but now I'm more cognizant of just those little things just in the last few years, with the loss of friends or family members when they passed naturally or tragically, and just, the things we went through in the country in the last 2 years worldwide, right? It makes you think about health. You had health issues. I typically don't get sick. I got sick this year. And look, I'm kind of a baby. So if I get a little bit sick, it makes me really appreciate being healthy. And so I try to start most days that I feel good with yes, I'm thankful I feel good,
Yeah. I think it takes practice. Like you said, it does. You said like over the last couple of years, maybe a little better at recognizing and doing, I think naturally we all have the ability to do that. We're born having that ability, but it's not natural to practice it. We naturally have it innately, I think, but we have to kind of work on it to let it come to fruition.
I'll even say act on it, right? So you had a conversation with your patient, with your client. And sometimes I think about how many times have I been in a location with someone who knew somebody that I knew, but we just didn't have the conversation to find out, like, oh, we know, Dustin Glass. I know Dustin Glass. Like, that's crazy, And I think that happens more often than we think, where we could be at an event, like you were at an event, or maybe out to dinner at a restaurant. And so it's about, maybe opening up sometimes, right, and being a little bit vulnerable, or sharing some stuff with other people, or extending your hand out and breaking the ice, I should say, and having a conversation. Whereas normally, we might be head down in our phone or kind of in our own thoughts, you know?
Yeah.
And, so anyways, not to ramble on about it, but I love those things. You know, when I get a couple little reminders, it seems to always be at the right time where I've had a thought or two, and then there's just a little something, and you're like, okay, I could ignore that thing, or I could look at that as a weird positive coincidence, and that's how I choose to look at things, you know?
Yeah, I forget. I read a book on some, and I'm going to butcher it, but it's something, and you might remember what this is all about, but it's like the 2-second rule or the 5-second rule. Basically, it says, like, if you have that thought and if you have a feeling of, talking to somebody or a thought comes across your mind, if you don't act on it within the 2 seconds, 5 seconds, it's not going to happen. Basically, it's hard to get that moment back. So practice, whatever the seconds is. I think it's 2 or 5 seconds
to act on
it. But it takes practice of doing that because it's so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
When you start, and then what happens is it starts opening up so many more doors because you keep practicing it, and you're like, oh my gosh, and then it's just this trickle effect and this domino effect of opportunities that start coming. No, you start making those opportunities. They've always been there.
Sure.
Opportunities have always been there, but how you've responded to them. So, and I think
about that all the time, especially when I sometimes, there's a decision to be made, and sometimes you could say, I'll do this or I'll do this. Perfect example, if I can go into it this weekend, I was in Las Vegas again for the second time this month, which is unusual. But I went for the night. My good friend had tickets to go see this concert at T-Mobile Arena, and his friend has a suite there. And so we got to go in the suite, got to see this concert for free. So I made the road trip up. We made a 24-hour trip. His son actually had a Christmas carol thing. He's a young, I think he's maybe 5. He's a little stud. And he had a little Christmas thing. And so instead of staying for the weekend, he's like, let's go up, see the concert. We'll have dinner, chill out, and then we'll come back. So I don't feel like a bad dad. I want to be there. Just like what you were saying about being here for the podcast tonight, Gosh, I'm missing time with my daughter. She's only home for so many days. And so I appreciate you making time and coming when, that time's valuable, right?
Right.
So getting to my point, we had dinner, had a couple cocktails, went to the concert. After the concert, one of his ex-teammates, he used to play for the Chargers and a couple other teams, and he's a free agent right now. And anyways, one of the guys from the Raiders was texting with him, who used to also be on the Chargers, and he said, hey, I'm out at this other dinner spot. You guys should come by here. And by this time, it was past midnight. And we were, in an Uber headed back to the hotel, and he gets this. He said, "Hey, do you want to go?" And it's, 10 minutes away, and I know him too. I haven't seen him in a couple of years. It would have been great to see him, and just give him a hug, catch up, and we just decided, gosh, we've had a few cocktails. If we go to do this thing, it's going to be even a couple more hours. Yeah. He's been known to wrap us both into some extra time. And so we said, hey, we're going to call it a night. And we called it a night a little bit, closer to the 1 o'clock something hour than the 3 o'clock hour. And so as I'm laying in bed about to go to sleep, I'm thinking, man, should I have gone and seen DP, Like that would have, I could have gone and seen him. It's been a couple of years. We could have chatted it up. Maybe I would have stayed till Sunday. He could have gone back to see his son. I could have got a couple treatments in. So I think about those things sometimes, about missed opportunities, or on the opposite end, I know sometimes if somebody calls you for an appointment, you rarely say no if you can make it. And that's the other reason I always want to be available when someone reaches out, But that was an instance where I didn't go, and then was like, I know it would have been fun, but it was the smarter decision because we were both up early. We hit the road. Yeah. We got back and, he made it to his son's thing. His son looked dapper sharp, and he looked sharp. So
it's good.
I love that family. Yeah, they're awesome. Yeah.
Good. Sounds like a good weekend.
Yeah, it was a good weekend. I'd say that was, one of the highlights, kind of extended the birthday celebration and listened to some good music. I think music's always good to, change your vibe up a little bit. And it makes me appreciate San Diego as well. Nothing against Las Vegas or their football team, but it's not the city for me to be in for too long. I know there's some nice places, but we were staying on the Strip, and it was fun. But I was happy to be back home.
Yeah, well, good.
Yeah. It'd be more fun if maybe we went one weekend. Well, maybe we could have a remote podcast from there.
Yeah.
Oh, now they both look up, right? Yeah, they're like, okay,
let's go.
Well, I have a few questions for you, football related.
Okay.
Maybe this could be rapid fire and not like some in-depth analysis, but I'm just curious what your instinct is. If I asked you right now, what's the best team in the NFL? And I'll give you a couple.
Okay, yeah.
A couple from the AFC, Bills, Chiefs. A couple from the NFC, Eagles, and San Francisco. Who's winning the Super Bowl if those are the last 4 teams standing?
Definitely not the Niners.
Definitely not the Niners. Okay,
Yeah,
they're out. Put that on the record.
Because of the relationship here.
Okay,
It has nothing to do with the team.
Right.
I don't know. I like Bills.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just
a vibe. Yeah, the Chiefs have won it before. The Bills came up just 13 seconds short last year. Sometimes I think that there's more than one team that is capable of being at the peak of the mountain.
Yeah.
But, you always want to win that last game, asterisk, in January, February.
Right.
Not the last game of the season. You don't make the playoffs, but you want to be able to win that last game. And, I think out of those, the Chiefs are dangerous too, but I didn't put the Chargers in there. I think if we can make the playoffs, we're capable of beating the Chiefs. We match up well with them, I'd say, in previous years. But with these 4 teams, with the Eagles quarterback getting hurt, so getting to that point, he's not playing probably for the rest of the regular season. He'll come back for the playoffs. Here's my issue with that. One is they've been winning games big, and I believe that there's something to either losing in the last month of the season just to get your focus right again and show you that you're vulnerable and beatable. But also, I think it's hard to, if you especially never played in close games, to then be out and then come back not in the wild card round, but the divisional round, where if you lose, obviously you're out. If you win, you go into the NFC Championship game. I mean, that's tough. What if you're down 14-0 at half?
Yep.
If you haven't been in that position before, people start looking. You haven't played in a month. Maybe you're a little rusty. There's something to reps and there's something to ramping up, which is why I mentioned the Chargers half, because, if they get everybody back from the, IR and off the sidelines to play, I think they could be a team that's ramping up. Whereas maybe the Eagles with their quarterback, with Jalen having hurt, which we'll talk about his shoulder issue here in a second.
I definitely want to talk about that.
Yeah, so I mean,
that's
I like San Francisco. I think San Francisco could beat the Eagles in a playoff scenario like that, even in Philadelphia.
Yeah,
I think they could. Even with Brock Purdy, they have a strong enough defense. It'd be a good storyline. I think it'd be a close game.
That's the only reason I like the storyline. Yeah, I'm really rooting for him. I love it.
Absolutely,
it's a Disney movie being made right now.
It really is a Disney movie. He's the last pick of the draft.
It's so awesome.
Third quarterback, right? Trey Lance gets hurt. Here comes Jimmy. He's supposed to be, and I think it's not ironic. I think it's weird that Jimmy G wasn't playing against Tom Brady. I wanted to see that matchup in San Francisco. I kind of had that on the calendar when I saw that. But since we mentioned it. So Jalen Hurts, he hurt his shoulder. Yeah. They said sprained shoulder. That's what I read, at least, right? Yep. I showed you the video clip. Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think we both agreed. I mean, they don't go into specifics with it, so it could be a number of things.
You need to chill off that coffee.
Yeah, you're going to start getting a little shaky.
I don't even drink coffee, man. I've killed 3/4 of this.
You'll be in trouble tonight. Yeah, it looked like AC, it looked like it could have been an AC sprain, but I also took a double take. It could have been posterior capsule too, just the way it rolled up on that. So the initial contact looked AC, and then he got sandwiched, and it kind of just got, so I can see how that posterior capsule could get really strained there.
Describe that for me a little bit.
Well, so remember, a sprain is basically the ligaments, right? And there's several ligaments of the shoulder. Most of them are on the anterior side and at the AC. And then you got the coracoacromial, the acromioclavicular, and what else am I missing?
The acromioclavicular ligament. You have
coracoacromial, acromioclavicular.
Well, the specifics, aren't.
Yeah, it gets a little. I need some of your coffee.
It's all good.
Anyway,
no
the capsule there, I just think it's like part of it's the labrum, right? You got the suction cup of the labrum back there, and then the muscle of the rotator cuff the external rotators there. So when it gets kind of over rotated and sandwiched like that against the ground and against the player, you can kind of strain those muscles and sprain the ligaments in the capsule.
I guess what I was saying was, from the looks of it, was it because, so when he was going on a quarterback run, for those who were listening and didn't see the video, the QB for the Eagles was running. He was going around the right side. He's a right-handed quarterback. He was running. He got hit from the left side, driven down onto his right shoulder, and the tackler landed on top of him. And it looked like he landed on the tip of his shoulder, and kind of the shoulder rolled forward with a lot of weight on it, correct?
Towards himself, yeah.
So that's why you thought capsule as well as maybe AC joint?
Possibly, yeah. So more of a sprain strain type thing where you get the strain of the posterior muscles.
Gotcha.
But we'll see.
And so now we're at the point of the season where it's 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. We have 3 weeks in the season approximately. We're episode 16 of our podcast, going into week 16 of the NFL season when this Monday Night Football game ends. And so they're uncertain if he's going to be back in the regular season, which is why I bring up, if his first game back is the playoffs, which isn't going to be the wild card round, it's going to be the divisional round. That's just a lot. There's butterflies, there's rust. Maybe you suck in the first half and you come back in the second half. There's such a dynamic team.
It's a real tough one to put your money on that one, because that's his throwing arm, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah,
it's his right side.
I mean, look, if it's a little sore, that ball can sail.
But the stability of that AC joint and the glenohumeral joint, and it's going to be, it's so much more vulnerable, and the other team knows that too.
Yeah.
So
I would almost love for him to get reps even in week 18 in a meaningless week, but they're probably not. They're not going to have him come 2 weeks out just to get some reps and then risk, a sack or risk an injury. So, he's a quarterback. He'll get out and he'll practice that week and probably try to minimize it. It's not ideal,
right?
Is what I would say,
right?
So
he's got some work to do. Training staff's got some work to do.
And maybe on the flip side of the coin, if I was a coach of that team, I might say, listen, guys, everybody else needs to step up here. Everyone needs to be super sharp. We need to minimize the mistakes. We need to make sure O-line that no one touches him.
Right.
And maybe that makes them all play even sharper. They have the best O-line in the league,
right?
Arguably, So, that's interesting with that. Do you mind if I run down a few of the injuries in the NFL that happened this last week?
Yeah, go for it.
And if any are interesting, pause me on it, But speaking of some interesting games, I watched the Colts-Vikings game. We mentioned that earlier. So the Colts were up 33-0. The Vikings came back and beat them in overtime. In that game, the Colts running back Jonathan Taylor re-injured his ankle. They're saying high ankle sprain. He's out for the year, done for the year. Colts are not going to make the playoffs, it looks like. So, it looks like his season's done, and that's unfortunate. He was the best back in the league last year and then suffered an injury early. Maybe came back too early, or, that's all speculation right now. At this point in time, he came back when he thought he was ready, and he got hurt again. And being it's at the same ankle, it's probably wasn't 100%, and now it's re-injured, right?
And that's what we talked about it before, but most of these athletes are playing
less than 100%.
Yeah, all the time. So to put it on one thing, is very hard. Early on in the season when they're a little more fresh, legs are fresh, but you can obviously say, oh, that was injured to do this play. But when they're going in, game in, game out, they're not 100% like you said. So
it's tough when those guys there's a dozen guys in the league that if they're not playing for your team on Sunday or Saturday or Thursday or Monday, I guess, right? 4 days of the week now, then it drastically changes how your team is, how good they are, the dynamics. So Jonathan Taylor is one of those guys. The Colts are not the same without him. And so
that's too bad.
Yeah, might explain why their season kind of went a little bit south, right? So that was, the Colts-Vikings game. That was interesting that they gave up that big lead. I left the hotel room in Vegas, and it was 33-0. And then I was saying I stopped, a little bit later and checked in, and it went into overtime, and I was like, I don't think I've ever, what? Like,
Yeah.
is that for, I thought it was a glitch on my phone, you know?
I'm trying to think, how does that happen? Like, I mean, I didn't
Man.
watch the game, but I'm talking about at halftime, you're in the locker room, you're getting pep talks, two
Yeah.
different separate
One's
pep
like
talks.
you're getting your ass kicked.
Yeah.
One's like, good job,
Right,
boys.
exactly. Keep up. Let's
Yeah.
keep this momentum going. Let's go. The other one's like, you guys got to figure something out. We're drawing. So I want to know what was said to spark.
Well, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
So Matt Ryan was a quarterback of the Colts for this
Mm-hmm.
loss, 33-0, the greatest loss in NFL history or greatest comeback. Famously or infamously,
Mm-hmm.
he was also the quarterback of the Atlanta Falcons when they lost the Super Bowl to Tom Brady, and they were up 28-3 going into the third quarter. So he's had two of the biggest collapses,
Oh,
right?
man.
Would you say that's Matt Ryan quarterback, like the Twitterverse is, or would you say that's unfortunate? He's a great quarterback, has had a lot of years of success. Where do you put that?
Yeah.
Coaching? Because it's
put
two different teams.
I was going to say, when you put it that way, and I didn't know those stats, but that might be a leadership thing. You know, it might be an energy thing in the huddle.
At some point, you got to stop the bleeding, right?
Right.
You have to say, "Come on, guys!"
Yeah.
Like
something
it's
must
33-20
change.
right now.
Something must change in that huddle.
Yeah.
Where it's a different player. I don't know.
Yeah.
Because you'd have to say something's different, and that's too many similarities between.
Certain people,
He's
I
the
would
common
say,
denominator, so that's why
Yes.
you'd have to say something's there.
and I hate to say that about a quarterback, right?
Right.
Like, not everyone is elite level, but I'd say anyone who's played in the league for as long as he has, put up the numbers that he has been to a Super Bowl, win or lose, you know, that's a remarkable feat. So I have a lot of respect for him. But, it's hard to think that, like, a Steve Young, a Joe Montana, a Tom Brady, would give up a 33-0 lead. Even a young kid like Justin Herbert, I don't think that kid is going to allow his O-line and the rest of the team. He's quiet and soft-spoken, but he's going to fire up in that situation. I don't even know him like that. That's just the first 1 degree of separation knowledge I have,
Yeah. It'd be interesting to see the stats on his wins too, because it's like Babe Ruth, the leading strikeout, right? But he's also the leading home run hitter.
Correct.
So everybody knows him
great
with the home
point.
run hitter.
Right.
But so I wonder if he's got
he
equally
could
as
be
many,
like
so many more comebacks where
Sure.
I don't know. We always know about the Tom Brady's, the Mannings, and the guys that have famously done
I
it.
feel bad for him because I've said it that way, and I'm not
Yeah.
the first person to make that comment. But I would hate for that to be one of the things that they remember about Matt Ryan.
Yep.
It's already, anyways. I want to move on from that.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Just for his sake.
Yeah. So there are a couple calf injuries as well. We talked about calf injuries a little bit. We talked about deep vein thrombosis last week. We talked about sprains and strains. I just wanted to, mention a couple of people who were unfortunate enough to get injured. Brian Allen on the Rams had a calf injury. They think it's a sprain of some sort. So he's out for a few weeks. The Ravens Pro Bowl cornerback, Marcus Peters, big loss for the Ravens. He also had a calf injury, a calf strain, they say, and he's out for the remainder of the year. And, for a cornerback, you're quick moving. It's quick direction change. You really do need to not have a grade 1, a grade 2 sprain or a pull of the calf, because you're not going to have that explosiveness. Even if you can play, even if you can change direction, it's not can you do it, it's how fast are you doing it? How responsive are you?
You're going to lose that split little second, which is
That's
a game
all
changer.
it is. It's a game changer. You're going to get shook.
Yep.
So it's I do want to mention actually one other, it's not an injury, but I want to give a shout out to somebody. Rayshon Jenkins, he used to be a cornerback on the Chargers, 4 years with the Chargers, 2 years with the Jags, and I bring up the Jags game in particular. They played this weekend, and he ended that game against the Cowboys. The Cowboys were up against the Jags. Jags made a comeback. The game went into overtime. He had a pick 6, took it house, won the game for the Jaguars, upset
Huge win.
the Cowboys. Huge win for them. Trevor Lawrence, I think, had 4 touchdowns. He's really coming into his own.
He needs to.
I would say he doesn't even have a star wide receiver. He doesn't have a Tyreek Hill. He doesn't have a Keenan Allen. He doesn't have a Devontae Adams. And he's still young, and so I like the Jags team. They're interesting.
Yeah.
And it's not just because they have a pool at their stadium. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that.
They have a pool on the upper deck of their stadium.
Yeah.
And
for somebody that doesn't like water, I'm surprised you know that, or you know that. So you
when I go to new
it.
stadiums, I take little tours, you know,
Yeah.
and I was walking around and I saw this glass wall above me. And then I saw a lady walking around in a bikini.
Yeah,
and I said, that's an interesting outfit to wear, though we are in Florida.
Yeah.
Then I saw somebody else, and I saw a guy in swim trunks and flip-flops and no shirt. And I said, wow, they don't check attire. This is really like South Beach type of, even though it was Jacksonville.
Yeah.
No disrespect to the Miami people. But, so there's a swimming pool
That's
up there. You can be in your bathing suits and watch the game. And it's quite the vantage point.
Yeah, I bet.
You know?
That's fun.
Yeah. So anyways, Rayshawn Jenkins took a pick house, ended the game.
That's
and,
fun.
you know, I think must be such an awesome feeling, right? Like it's like throwing a game-winning touchdown, but you're ending the game, walk off.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. And with risk of hyping these two gentlemen up here, Steven and Dustin, I'm going to bring up another game, the Raiders and the Pats game. So now I wish I would have gone out with DP on Saturday night because on Sunday they ended the game in a remarkable fashion. So
I didn't see it, so you got to film it.
So the Pats were basically up at the end of the game. It looked like they were going to win. Raiders score a touchdown at the very end of the game in the fourth quarter, tie it up, send it to No, it's almost going to overtime. It's essentially going to overtime. There's less than a minute left. Pats get the ball, and they could take a knee. They could Hail Mary it maybe. They decided to run it. I was paying special attention because my opponent in fantasy football had this particular running back, and he breaks off like a 40-yard run with the time expiring. Now, had he got like a few more yards and then they had like 1 second, maybe they kick a field goal and end the game with the win. He's running down. I think the clock expired. I'm not really sure, but it was wild. He took like 30, 40 yards. I think the clock did expire, and the running back, I won't mention his name, but he lateraled it, not super awkward or unusual, to a wide receiver. The wide receiver caught it, and then he couldn't really do much with it. He was on the 30, 40-yard line, and he decided to throw it across the field, presumably to a teammate, or maybe he just panicked and was like, I'm about to get tackled. I'm just going to turn and throw. He threw it, and Chandler Jones, the expatriate, who went to the Arizona Cardinals and now is on the Raiders, intercepted that lateral. No time on the clock, intercepted it at like the 50, stiff arms the quarterback of the Patriots, and takes it house, and they win it with no time on the clock, and so what a crazy game and crazy ending.
Yeah, that was nuts.
Especially for a Bill Belichick team.
Yeah, I saw the forum, and then I know exactly what you're talking about. Didn't realize, there's so many.
What was interesting about that game too is,
what are you thinking?
Yeah, that's where you just got That's unfortunate for that. I know that guy got chewed out, because that's not how Bill Belichick probably coaches him to do.
No.
Probably just go out of bounds. We're going to overtime. Yep. In that game, there was an injury tying it to sports medicine. Hunter Henry, who also used to be on the Chargers, is now on the Patriots as a tight end. And they were basically in goal line situation, Dustin, and he got poked in the eye. And so they couldn't go like 12 personnel. They couldn't go big where they had the two tight ends and because he was out. So the offensive coordinator decided to put the quarterback in shotgun. So instead of being big formation on the one, they were in shotgun, and they weren't able to convert, And so I just was like, man, that's not a break. It's not a tear. It's not I got to stop the play on the field. I got poked in the eye. I can't see.
Yeah.
I can jog off the field, but he was out for that critical time, and they had to change up their play calling, right? So it's just little nuances like that you might be like, why are they in shotgun right there?
Not even thinking about it.
They don't have their personnel to be in big package right now.
Yeah, not the way it's written up. So
not the way it's written up.
You have to audible, like you said.
Yeah. So congratulations, your Raiders had a big win.
It was given to him.
I thought about you. I was like, man, when Dustin sees that, he's going to be super excited.
Yeah.
The Bills-Dolphins game this weekend. The Bills-Dolphins went to, there was fireworks. There was almost 80 points scored combined.
Yeah.
The Bills ended up winning.
I did see that one. That was That was a fun game because, like I talked about last week about the weather.
Yes.
That was snowing.
Yeah.
And it was fun. Like gridiron football back in the day.
Yep.
And so
I like it when the
enjoy those
elements
games.
have a part in it. I think that's part of football. When everything is turf, if one day everything is turf and everything's domed, to me it's going to be an evolution into arena ball a little bit, even though it's
like
100
playing
yards.
Madden. Everything's going to be pretty much.
Yeah, everything's all pretty uniform.
Yeah.
And I will say in the last couple of weeks, I've seen a few, I know we've talked about it before, but I keep seeing it week in and week out, where guys, if they were on turf, would have got seriously injured. I saw another one this weekend, Ryan Tannehill, we mentioned, in the Chargers Titans game. The Chargers came back and, with less than a minute to go, drove down the field, kicked a field goal, the game-winning field goal. But early in the game, the Titans quarterback, Ryan Tannehill, hurt his ankle on a sack. So he got dragged down. His ankle, you could see it got rolled up. It looked like his knee got tweaked as well. Immediately he grabbed the ankle. And it was on turf in SoFi, but it wasn't one of those where it got caught, like it slid out, So I had the thought there, I'm glad that released, it didn't get caught under and get really rolled up hard. It could have broken maybe, but I saw a couple others this week that were on grass. One was now I'm forgetting what the player's name was, but this guy got undercut and it looked like his leg was going to plant, and he kicked up a big sod of dirt. And so on a turf field, that's not happening. And I thought to myself, that guy's lucky that was an away game for him, So, and there's a couple significant injuries, right? You were mentioning that there was a couple people you saw that got carted off this week.
Yeah, a couple spinal injuries.
Spinal, huh?
Yeah. So one, spine boarded. So two spine boarded, which is pretty, that's, you never like to see that. But one of them was, and I wrote it down, the Falcons defensive coordinators, before the game even started, the Falcons,
the coach.
The coach got laid out by, who was it? Shahid, basically on a punt coverage pregame. They were working on punt coverage. The opposite team.
Oh, during warmups.
Yeah, during warmups, and Rashid just lost perspective of where everybody was.
Yeah,
and I guess leveled him pretty good to where he had to be spine boarded and.
Dude, no way.
Yeah, gone right to the hospital. But
so he must have hit the ground hard or had a hard collision.
Yep. So, and then...
and was he older, do you know, the coach?
73 years old,
So that's the other thing, too, right? It's not like a 30-year-old Sometimes you have personnel of all ages. Sometimes there's younger kids almost, teenage kids that are ball boys or, doing some...
Or the cheerleaders you see get laid out all the time. Yeah. So it's
scary.
It's really scary, especially for hitting the ground like that, especially when you're not expecting it, So, and then the Bears O-lineman, Tevin Jenkins, and am I saying that right? Tevin?
I'm not sure.
Yeah. But he left in a stretcher off the field with a neck injury as well. So
what happened there? Do you know?
Yeah, not sure what happened there. But I kind of wanted to talk about those spine board incidences and what
you've been involved in that before, right?
Yeah, a couple of the on-field type things, and we talked about it a while ago. I think maybe first or second episode about how, because I think we were giving praise to the medical staff, right, and how. We, as a staff, when you're working, and every team does it differently, but anybody that's going to be kind of on the sideline close to that, or when I was doing arena in the box, because that's where the players were, or hockey, same thing. Anybody that's right there that can be immediate care, typically they'll have emergency procedure before every game. You'll go through the protocols, and one of the teams I worked for early on, we would do that before every game. We would do, as a team, walk through the spine boarding
the procedure.
So
that's important, right? You don't want anyone making a mistake there.
And that was put in place by the head athletic trainer, which was, I give him a lot of praise, because a lot of teams aren't going to do that, right? But he thought it was so important, and where we would know where the paramedics were, we would know where all the doctors were sitting in the stands, where we would know where the radiology tech was.
What team was this with?
So this was arena football.
Arena with the KISS.
Yeah. No, it was with the LA team.
Oh, gotcha.
So it was just done really well, and sure enough, we had two incidences where I was involved, and just kind of wanted to talk about that spine boarding thing, because when people see these guys run out on the field, the first thing you'll see is somebody go right to the head, right?
Correct.
So, and usually, they'll run out there and they'll do a really quick assessment of what's wrong. And if they, as soon as they say neck pain or numbness, tingling in the arms or legs, they're going right to the head and stabilizing. Right. So you'll see
err on the side of caution, right?
Err on the side of caution. So you'll see a guy or girl go right to the head and stabilize that spine, hold the alignment, and at that point they're the point person. So they're the point person in the whole thing. They are not moving. So you'll see them kind of
that's their only job.
It's the only job,
and the most important job. If something's wrong, that's
100 the most important job. So they're at the head of the player on the field. They're holding their head stable for alignment, so no rotation, no lateral deviation, nothing. So they're holding it. They're also checking underneath, pressing on the spine, seeing for any kind of obvious deformities or any increased pain. So they're checking that. So there's a lot going on, and you'll see them have their head usually really close to the person, talking to them, keeping them calm, asking them questions. So there's a lot going on, and by the time everybody else gets there, everybody knows what position they're going to be on that board, right?
Yeah.
And so you'll see that. So first,
it's like a pit crew.
It's 100%.
Everyone has their role.
Everyone's working. It's really good, and it's very important. So, so you'll see basically the stabilization, and then you'll basically see another person with the cervical collar, and basically at that point they're gonna collar up and put a cervical collar around and stabilize that. Holding, making sure that head is staying aligned. So that collar will slide underneath and attach in the front. So you'll see that. And like I said, they're holding that alignment the whole time. And then on the sides, you'll see hopefully 2 to 3 people. If not, there's at least one person there that's going to be on the side. And what they're going to do is they're going to reach across the side. So across the shoulders, across the hips, across the knees,
the top,
across the top of the body.
Right.
And then at that point, when the person at the head counts off 3, usually 1, 2, 3, and it's predetermined. It's on 3.
On 3.
We're going to all pull together, roll over the side. At that time, and there's another assistant with the spine board who is going to slide that spine board, and at the same time, they're checking the back also, feeling up the back, feeling, And
so let me interject just to kind of explain, because you're going into a lot of detail, which is great. But when they move the patient like that or the player like that, they're trying to immobilize him essentially, right? So they're keeping their head neutral. If they're rotating their lower body, their upper body, it's all going in one motion. So there's not any spinal rotation, no lateral deviation. They're trying to get that board slid under them, minimally moving that patient, but also doing an exam while you have them flipped up, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So stiff as a board,
Stiff as a board.
Yeah. So everything's got to move in unison. That's why the head person's in charge. Because if people start moving and that guy's holding the head,
bad news.
Yeah, bad news. Because the fear is that there's a fracture, and that fracture could affect the spinal cord.
Yep.
And depending on what level, it's going to affect different, paralyzed or death, right?
The best thing is to go into that situation. And I haven't been in it, but my mindset would be to act as if it's the worst situation and be as precautious as you, with as much precaution, I should say, as you can, assuming that it's the worst until you find out it's not.
Yep, exactly. So once 1, 2, 3, we roll over, slide the board, do the checks. Then we're all putting back down at the same time, because we're not going to be a domino effect, right? So, and then again on the person at the head, 1, 2, 3, go back. Then there's several straps so around the torso. You'll see usually 3 straps
to further immobilize them.
Further immobilize, and you start at the top, work down. So again, you want to make sure that the thing closest to the neck is not moving.
Yeah.
You've already stabilized the neck with the collar. Now you're going to get the shoulders, and you'll see them cross typically. And so then you start doing that. Then you'll see them pack black either towels or foam around the head again, and then you'll also see them tape down thing. Yeah, so inside the collar and around the foam or around the towel, there's not excess movement once you lift up the board and get them on the stretcher or gurney. So
I'm going to say I've been on a spine board 2 times, unfortunately, or fortunately, which, depending on perspective, but both times was really disconcerting. It doesn't feel good to be in that. It felt very claustrophobic. It felt very serious. It was kind of scary. And like, if you or I get injured, the plus and the minus is I'm already going through a differential diagnosis in my head. Look, when I tore my ACL, I don't think I even hit the ground, and my mind was already like, that popped. It moved in a weird way. That's your ACL. Hopefully it didn't fracture. I had those micro thoughts before I hit the ground. So I was on this spine board, and it's scary. You can't move, and you think the worst. And so the person who's at the head who's talking is super important. The first time I was on one, I had that person there, the paramedic, and they were just like, hey, dude, you're not going to this wedding, so just chill out. You're going to be okay. Like, you need to just relax. And the second time, it was an emergency thing. We could talk about that at another point in time, but there was this taxi cab that blew through a stop sign into a crowd of people outside a nightclub here in San Diego. And I was happening to walk by to get some pizza that night. I wasn't even going out, and I saw a patient who was leaving the club. I went up to say hi to him, and then this cab blew into the whole crowd. And I wasn't super seriously hurt, but I talked to whoever. We were helping some other people, and he's like, I'm not taking any chances. We're boarding you. And that was terrible because there were so many injuries. He boarded me, and then he was gone, and I was just strapped. And then, I'll get into that story later, but they thought there was like a bomb nearby, so people were tripping out. And I heard that. And I'm like, well, somebody unstrap me. Like, I don't care about my back right now. Like, I will walk away from here. I'm not trying to be strapped in here, So that was, but to my point, as on the patient side, it's kind of scary to be in that situation because you feel, rightfully so restricted. Right. So when you said, hey, the person at the top, at the head of it instantly triggered that thought of that person who was like peaceful, calm. And also explaining you're strapped up. You can only see the sky, bro. Right. You can't really turn your head. You can't, if you have good eyeball movement, you have some peripheral vision. That's it. Yeah. So those are all things that I hadn't ever thought about until I was in that situation.
And when you're an athlete, if you're being boarded, this could be bad. So you start going through all the things that you recall or your memories of other people or things you've seen, and
maybe thinking of your family in the stands who's tripping out right now.
No clue. Yeah, you're thinking about all kinds of things. So that's and the docs and the trainers are also asking you to squeeze, asking you, can you feel this? They're asking, they're triaging you right there.
There's a lot going on.
There's so much, and it's pretty cool to witness from a medical standpoint how, like you said, a pit crew is a perfect example because everybody has a job, everybody has a role, and then also to 1, 2, 3 get up on the and then you're talking the whole way going to the ambulance and trying to make sure
relaying information.
Okay. Yeah, because worst case scenario, one, if there is a fracture, we got to get the inflammation down off the spinal cord. We got to figure out, get X-rays. But if the patient is non-responsive, there's a whole nother thing going on too. Right. That's even worse when they're not responding at the same time, and you're fearing all kinds of things. So yeah.
Man, it's really cool that you've had those experiences to be in a situation like that. I was having a separate conversation with somebody, and we might have touched on this too, you and I. Sometimes I forget if this is podcast talk or if it's just, off the record life talk. But I was saying, if you haven't been in a pressure situation before, then the first time that you're in a pressure situation, it's really pressurized. You know, like the more you're in pressure situations, the better you respond, the calmer you are. And, I think training in that type of setting carries over into other areas of life, you know, whether it's losing your cool in traffic and you pause. I listened to a podcast this morning, actually, and the gentleman that the guy had on as a guest was talking about somebody who had gotten kidnapped in another country, and that person had the opportunity to speak with somebody higher up in their captors, right? And you might have like heard the thing.
Heard this,
yeah. And so the person just reacted, you know, as anybody would react, you know, maybe a little emotionally and a little with some anger. And that outburst at that time led to the person in charge being like, hey, I'm not going to be nice to you. You're going to be, you're going to have it hard, you know? And so I think they said for like 10 years, that one moment really cost her a lot, which is unfortunate. But the bigger point to that is I think of the many times where, you know, not dozens and dozens, Dustin, but there's been a half a dozen times in my life where I had to really pause and think about something. And if I would have reacted in the wrong way, because some of those instances, they weren't thought out, it was a reaction. And luckily it wasn't a negative reaction, right? But man, sometimes a decision can lead to long lasting consequences, you know? And so I hope to always, knock on wood, have the foresight to pause and think and be rational and not emotional to where you do something that you regret later on, you know? And so I think some of that comes with being in pressure situations, whether that's athletic events, whether it's, you know, you're in performance, or whether it's in a medical setting because you've had training,
right?
You know, with the training, that's practice, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
And it's not always what you want to be. You don't want to be trained at certain things, you
No,
know,
for sure.
But it does. They're all experiences that help you grow and learn and stuff.
Well, it helps with
what
your
I mean by
confidence,
that,
right?
sometimes they're not the most enjoyable situations, you know,
Right.
like people dying and people, you know,
Yeah.
and you know, I, you know, have not been involved with like war situations, but I can only imagine how terrible that kind of learning experience for a 17, 18-year-old.
So
you know,
young.
Yep.
Like just being
Fresh
young
out
or
of high
not,
school.
you know,
yeah.
but you're,
Oh yeah. It doesn't matter what age, but yeah, when you don't
know
have
what
as
it is
many
in the field
experiences, yep. So,
versus what it is in the classroom. So that's the ultimate. You're in the field and you're making do with what you have and adapting in a situation. And I can't imagine, you know, when we were in chiropractic school, a guy on a motorcycle sped by me half mile down the road. He had wrecked.
Was it Aaron?
It wasn't. Thankfully, it wasn't. Although, you know, I remember him loving his motorcycle.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But, yeah, and I was talking to this guy, and he was like, hey, you grab my phone, call my wife, you know? And I was like, holy shit, this is not good, you know? And I told him, hey, you know, so anyways, I called her up, and without getting into too much, you know, detail about it, it's insignificant in this conversation, but it made me take pause. That was an impressionable time, you know? It was, I was there before the ambulance came, and they came. His leg was twisted backwards. He thought he was going to die. And I was like, I definitely don't want to do anything that's going to accelerate this.
Yes.
And I was praying that the paramedics came, that somebody else came to help, you know? I was just like a bystander in traffic, you know? I was like, okay. And he lived, which was great. His wife called. I could hear kids in the background. And I said, hey, are you sitting down? You don't know me, but I'm with your husband. He's okay. But he's been in an accident, and I want to give you some hospital information. So when you get somebody to take care of the kids, you know where to go. And again, he's okay, but he wants to talk to you. And also you shouldn't freak out because, you know, the ambulance is coming, but like, you know, so I was trying to like set her up so she wasn't hysterical when they spoke. And that was, you know, one of those pressure packed instances where God forbid I'm in that situation again, but there's some confidence from having been in emergency situations, right? Yeah. I saw a paramedic in the gym today and was just thinking, he was lifting super hard. He was yoked. And I'm like, that's a good paramedic right there. He's preparing his body for life situations. You know, if he can lift something, he was doing some heavy deadlifts. I could see the veins popping. I mentioned last week somebody else in the gym was older and was working out hard. You can tell when someone's exerting themselves. And I thought to myself, you know, he had headphones on. I don't know what I would have said, but in my head I was thinking, good on him. You know, he knows that his job
requires a certain
level of athleticism or strength, and he's out here doing it, you know? So anyways, I don't know who he was, but I thought that was really cool. You know?
Very good. Good to take pause on those kind of things and reflect on that and
Yeah.
Remind you to get off the
couch and do something, right?
Yeah.
A couple other little tidbits before we wrap up for today.
Yeah.
I know your daughter's in town. She leaves for college here in a week.
January 7th, right before my birthday.
Okay.
Give her crap for that.
Yeah.
Not going to stick around for
Maybe
my
a
birthday.
bigger present comes your way because of it or something.
Right.
Hint, if you're listening.
Yeah.
So I was watching the Titans game, Titans-Chargers game, and they said something that I almost called you, and then I was like, I'll just talk to Dustin on Monday. But what they mentioned was the Titans have had, I'm going to let you guess, how many starters, how many different players have played for the Titans this year as a starter? Have entered the game. How many different players?
Whoa.
Anybody? Steven, Manny, you guys want to take a guess? How many different players have played for the Titans this year? Because there's 22, 11 on offense, 11 defense, 11 special teams. Yeah. So
I was going to say 23.
23 different players? Mm-hmm. Okay. You're way off. I'm just going to tell you. How many different players would you say? 34. Okay.
I think I saw that.
Yeah, how many different individuals have played a snap for the Tennessee Titans this year? Okay, you're the closest. It's 80. 80 different people have played for the Titans. I thought you were saying
I was too high.
No.
When you looked at it, oh, man.
No, 80 different players. So that means that out of the 22 starters, or, you could say 33 starters if you take special teams, right? Almost every position has had multiple people.
I'd like to see what that is like going back to 2019, 18, 17, and prior
to... Dude, that's where my mind goes, too. I would love to see the data there.
Like, what's the etiology on that?
Yes.
And why are we seeing it?
Because I wish the NFL would release that information or allow people like you and I or a team of people. It doesn't have to be you and I, but to analyze that information because there's metrics there.
Well, and I know in basketball, it's been skyrocketed too.
Has it?
Yeah, the injuries are just ridiculous.
Man, I was I felt bad for the training staff, the medical staff. Look, there's not that many people. If you think about, there's 5 guys on athletic trainer, assistant athletic trainer, the orthopedic, the head orthopedic isn't doing body work.
Yeah.
So there's not that many people there working.
That's a revolving door of those athletes.
If you take 10 people a day, which you can't even see 10 patients a day at an hour a person because they have practice and meetings, it's like sometimes you're patching things up versus fixing them. It just seems like, which is why I'm like, I can't believe superstars don't have their own guy.
Yeah.
I would have my own person.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the guys that I treat, to be honest, I'm surprised that they haven't. I'm not going to mention, be like, hey, I think you should put me on a retainer or something, but
right.
There's
a handful of guys, but
yeah.
So
80 guys, that's a lot.
That's a lot.
That's a lot.
Well, what was that one stat that we saw, or that I sent you that picture? I forget who were the 2 teams that played
the Injury Bowl.
The Injury Bowl, yeah.
So there was one guy. His name was. Gosh, what was his?
I sent it to you. It was the Cardinals and Broncos.
Yeah, his name was Beecham.
Yeah.
So he was the only guy who wasn't injured that season.
Yeah.
Between both those teams, just one player who wasn't injured.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
So, I thought that was crazy.
No, it is.
Then you're talking about 80 on that team.
80.
It's nuts.
Yeah, it's a collision sport. Right? Yeah. So it's that's just what it comes to. I had a couple other thoughts, and I wanted to ask you this question after sharing.
Mm-hmm.
I saw multiple games this weekend where clients I treated were on both sides of the ball, and I typically only really realize that when the Chargers are playing someone. It's like, oh, the Chargers are playing the Raiders like crazy. I'm rooting for so-and-so, and I also want this person to have a good game too because I know him. He's a good guy, or we're friends. And so sometimes I feel a little bit torn, and more I've seen clients on both sides of the ball where I'm like, oh, I'm pulling for the Texans because I know so-and-so. And I'm like, oh, shoot, I'm actually also pulling for the Jags because of, has that happened to you?
Yeah. So, and I think times have changed because we're seeing so much movement now.
That's also true.
That's part of the business of the sports. That is
true, yeah.
And I think it's kind of a bummer, right? I mean, but yeah, I've had those. What's fun for me and my family is walking down like the aisles at the supermarket or whatnot, and seeing the magazine covers, and be like, "Oh, that's my patient. That's my At one point, you know, because I was heavy into Supercross, so all the Supercross magazines had on the covers were my guys I was working with, and then, you know, doing the stuff with Dancing with the Stars. You know, depending on who I was working with, they were all, you know, so it's in the limelight. I mean, just this weekend, me and my dad went to Dick's Sporting Goods, and one of my players from the Dodgers was all plastered on something, and I remember, man, like working on that
crazy?
Prior, you know, I got him ready for the first pitch. You know, like he was a pitcher, and I just remember, like, you know, he would come to me.
Let's keep speaking stuff, man, because we spoke on this when we were in school on being able to be here and treat one or two people, and we've been doing it for, you know, a decade each plus. And man, you've treated some really notable people, and it's not just about the people that you've treated, but it's you've helped those individuals. You know, that's really it. It's not like, oh, you've treated this superstar, that superstar. That's cool for one time. You'll treat, you know, I see some docs that treat people once or twice, and
one and done, and
there's 15 videos from one treatment, you know, but I really care about if you've helped that person, you know, and so that's how I measure people that I treat. How good was their season? Did they stay injury free? Did they make the Pro Bowl? And when you see some people like that, it's I don't know, it makes you happy a little bit. It's the cool thing about our sport.
You get to know the person, and that's what I like. You know, like that's what I like talking. I'm not even talking about how good at games they had or whatnot. Just the person they were and how they treated us and how they treated the staff, and that's what I gravitate towards. And that's the stuff of, you know.
And what's the takeaway for you? Because for me, sometimes they're just like us. They're normal people, you know, and having 7 or 8 or sometimes 9 figures in your bank account doesn't change your life problems, you know, like your world is shattered if you lose a loved one. You still have the same issues we do. If your wife's not happy, life ain't happy. You know, those things are all universal.
I tell my kids all the time, and this is kind of weird and gross, I think, but because we've met a lot of
weird
people.
And gross. Okay, let's talk about it.
So we've met a lot of people, right? And and people at very high levels, and very, like, I've walked into hotels where I don't know who I'm meeting. I've just been told by an agent, hey, meet at this hotel. You don't know what you're walking through the door, right? And they could be high executives that everybody know, you know, or, you know, very influential people.
Especially when it starts to be referral based, right?
Right, exactly. And so, and I just, you know, and I take the excitement of the starstruck. It doesn't matter that way, because I'm looking at them as patients. I'm looking at them as, I'm here to do a job, get them feeling better. And when it comes down to it, because most of them are, you know, not dolled up like we see them on TV, or they're not, you know, they're in their sweats, or they're in their, you know, shirts or shorts and, you know, bathroom slippers or whatever. They're
it's
just
not performance. They're normal at home, regular people,
right? Yep. And especially, and I always just reflect on, you know, these are normal people with the same issues. And anytime I get like, and I haven't had this issue for a long time, which I don't know when it changed. I really don't know, because I don't think I've ever been like super, like, overly excited about, you know, because it's not, because I want to get to know him as a person. But if I do feel nervous or anxious, like I already tell my kids, I mean, just picture them with the flu.
Right.
Okay. Because we're usually at our worst as humans, like when we have the flu, right? We're all snotty,
feel terrible,
eyes crusty, we're shitting and we're throwing up, and we're like, everybody goes through that, right? There's not a human on the earth that's ever gotten through not having the flu or not having diarrhea and not being all
even
just
Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, our president,
everybody,
everyone,
right? Just nasty, you know, morning breath, like everybody experiences the same thing. So it's kind of weird, but like I just break down everybody as just like, I don't care, like it doesn't matter.
We're all human.
Yes, so that's a better way to say it versus going through my description. But that's how, like, just when you get nervous, instead of the old like picture them in your underwear, you know, like that was the old school way. That's what our parents used to say. Yeah, picture them in their underwear. You know, they'll be fine. Like picture them nasty, like, you know, and then fine.
It takes the edge off.
Right.
Yeah, there's no nervousness there.
Yeah.
Sometimes I've had a couple times where I didn't know till a few treatments into it, like, oh, I didn't know that you did that. Like, you didn't even mention that. Right. There's one person in particular I'm thinking of. He plays rugby and he's like world famous, you know, and I don't follow rugby like that.
Yeah.
You know, I just was like, I really like that guy because his energy, and we'll have him on. Okay. We'll have him on sometime, hopefully in Q1.
Yeah.
And it almost seems unauthentic because his energy is at such a higher level. I'm in a pretty good mood mostly. And if I'm not, I can take it up a notch when I need to. But he's just, man, just like some people you just have some banter with and some conversation. He's just good energy. And I wish great things for him. He hasn't had the smoothest time ever in his life. He's had a pretty interesting story and background, which is one of the reasons I'd like to bring him on. But I like those instances where sometimes you just know someone as a patient or as a person before you know their title, their role, their persona. Yeah. Right. So, but you know, like I said, let's keep speaking the things that we want, because I feel like most of the stuff that you and I have talked about, it hasn't always come when I've wanted. I've said that before, but it's come just in time. Yeah. You know,
when it's needed. Yeah.
Sometimes when it's really needed, right? Like at the very last tick of the midnight hour. But I can't complain, you know, because it's all the universe or life circumstances have always, it's always worked out for me. So I knock on wood. I'm thankful for that. And, you know, the things that we speak about with this podcast or, you know, in the years and decades to come, let's keep, like I said, speaking it, writing it down, sharing it with each other, adapting to it, helping each other, right? I think that's important. Because I think there is some synergy, and there aren't many things that I've done with you that haven't been successful. A lot of those things we've started from the bottom, you know, but we've built it and grown, and
that's how we've learned too. So.
That is how we've learned. Two last mini things.
Wait, let me get back real quick to those two neck injuries. I just want to put it out there that I know the coach was fine, checked out.
Thank you.
I don't know about the O-line, but the coach was fine, was able to fly home. So that was a good sign. He was alert, responsive. So
no, that's important. I should ask you to follow up on that.
So I tried to find more on the O-line. I think they said he was stable and everything checked out too.
Thank goodness.
Yeah.
That stuff's scary, right? Because like I said, it's you want to take all the precautions, hoping that it's not the worst thing. Right. Last thing you want to do is be careless or nonchalant and have it be something serious, right? So I'm glad you shared that. Well, along the serious injury, along the line of serious injuries, I should say, you know, I had a thought this weekend, and it was about the Miami Dolphins. So they've lost 3 games in a row. And not too many episodes ago, we talked about Tua Tagovailoa and his multiple concussions back-to-back weeks. Right. There was a whole controversy. Should he play? Should he not? And then after a couple weeks, they won a few games. Talk was, I didn't hear too much about it. They've lost 3 games. And my thought was, that guy's probably still not 100%. He's out there playing and he's performing, he's throwing touchdowns. That doesn't mean that during the week he's sleeping or he's able to lift. Just having had those concussions, sometimes lifting weights or physical exertion makes your headaches worse. Or, you know, the rest, the sleep is important. You know, there's confusion there. You know, I remember being in class and just, I lost my way on the way home one time, you know, like early on. And so my thought was, okay, he's back playing. I just feel bad that people are like piling on him and being like, oh, the Dolphins have lost 3 in a row. Like,
he's lost.
Maybe that guy is not 100% yet. Yeah. You know,
I agree. I would, you know,
and he's still taking hits.
Yeah.
Right. Maybe not concussions, but he's still getting shook.
Well, yeah, that's what I was just going to say. Getting jarred, you don't need to get hit to have a concussion. A lot of people don't think about that. Just getting jarred, like in a whiplash incident, you know, in a car accident, you could have a concussion without making contact with anything. Right. Just that back and forth movement, the brain sloshes inside that hard capsule with rigid edges. You're going to get some brain trauma. Right. At different levels, right? So there's no doubt that in my mind that I would find it very hard to believe that he's 100% mentally. Right. Now, he might have passed everything. I mean, he had to have passed everything because he wouldn't be in there. But all those underlying things, I think you brought up a good point, the sleep, you know, and so that's an easy one. Well, you're just stressed out, you're losing, you know, but the sleep patterns might be changed because of that, right? The focus.
For the average person, I'll say, just think of how much you have to process in the position of a quarterback. It's probably maybe the most important position where you have to process information quickly, right? Yeah. And there's been studies that have shown your reaction time pre-concussion and post-concussion, 1 week, 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, that your reaction time is slower, your processing time is slower post-concussion, right? So in a game where it's, a half a second, if you get rid of the ball in 2.4 seconds or 2.9 seconds, that's the difference between a sack or a completion. There's, dozens of plays this weekend where, Justin Herbert had one where he rolled out and got rid of a ball milliseconds before he got pelted and threw a strike, for the last play before a game-winning field goal. Yeah. And so if he's not 100% sharp, you think he's doing that? No. Probably not. Nope. So I felt bad for him. I hope it's nothing cognitive, but 2 concussions just a few weeks ago, I'd say that it's tough to be 100% there, right. So I'm hoping that he is.
Yeah.
And last thing, I wanted to get your opinion on bowl games, right? So now we're coming to that time of the season. College season is wrapping up. There's some big games going on, big bowl games. Some big name players who are maybe declaring for the NFL draft. We've seen more and more of this in years past. This year, before I came in here, saw that there's a particular player. He's the running back for Texas. His name's Bijan Robinson. And the Texas Longhorns are playing in the Alamo Bowl. And he has decided he's going to declare for the NFL draft 2 years early as an underclassman. But he's not playing in the bowl game. And so my question to you is, how do you feel about that as a former collegiate athlete? Would you have wanted to play in a bowl game, or would you be like, gosh, I have an agent, I have a family, depending on your circumstance. If you come from a good background and you're not trying to put on a generation of people, maybe you make a different decision. So no judgment on this particular individual.
Right.
By the way, there's 2 other teammates of his that aren't playing in the bowl game. But what do you think about that? And then also on the flip side, your daughter plays college sports, right?
Yep.
What would you say to her if there was like an equivalent of that
opportunity?
Yeah. Like, do you want to get hurt in your last game? You could blow, which has happened in the past.
Right. Yeah. So knowing how many variables, it just seems like things happen when you have choices like that, right?
Sure.
So for me, I've always erred on, if you've accomplished everything you want to accomplish and your mind's already set on going
the next level.
Yeah. You've done what you needed to do. The bowl game is an extra bonus. Let's just take what you've done and let's, move on to the next. Gotcha. And that way you're now gambling on your future.
Sure.
So I would be more apt to say, hey, you're healthy right now.
Sit out.
And if you're not healthy, let's go recover. No need to go, put yourself at jeopardy.
Right.
Especially like you mentioned, could be a game changer for yourself, your family. A lot of things factor into it. Depending on where you're speculated to go in the draft, a little minor injury could even drop you down. Bad play call could bring you down. A judgment call could bring you down in something.
More
so
tape,
there's
right?
There's just too many variables that could go against you than could go for you. So in our family, we always like to do the pros and cons. Write it all out. Let's talk it all out. And if at the end of the day, hopefully there's one side that we can help make the decision.
One side outweighs the other.
Yeah. So my daughter kind of had that situation where she was selected onto the Israeli national team to play softball this year. And it was really, pretty cool. She
prestigious.
Actually, she was one of there's only 2 high school girls that got asked to be part of the U23 team.
Damn, that's
but
awesome.
It's speculated to then, the idea is that team would then become the national team for the following for the Olympics, right? To try to qualify for the Olympics. So she's got this opportunity to possibly be on an Olympic team in 4 years. I think it was 2 years. So I'm like, and she already got accepted already. And then there were so many things. It was her senior year going into college. So she also had a lot of college things she had to prepare for.
Full plate,
and
right?
so I was totally all go national, because I got to travel with the national teams. I knew what that's going to bring. I knew, so I was pushing really hard for that.
Everything.
Yeah, but she was worried how it was going to affect going into college, her senior year, what she had to do for prep for that, because it was going to be a huge thing.
Yeah, I can see
and
that
for
too.
a small window of time, right? She only had graduate, and then we have to go get citizenship. We have to go do all this. So there was a lot she had to do, because she was being invited where a lot of the girls, I mean, these girls were 21, 22, 23 years
That's
old.
awesome.
She was 17 at the time.
Yeah.
So, or maybe she just turned 18. But I remember driving her to LA for the little workout. I was like one of the only people that drove their daughter. Everybody else flew in and drove with their husbands and kids. And so huge honor, right? So, but we had to do that whole kind of thing, and it was not easy making the decision. She decided to talk to them and say, "Hey, it's not that I don't want to be on the team. I can't get it all done for this." And they were understanding, and so they still said, "Okay, let's regroup next season." And we still, so the door's still open. So we're keeping our fingers crossed that it's actually, going to come.
Opportunity.
Yeah, so another, and then she'll already, because one of her good friends that was playing for Oregon State was a year older, and she was going to be on the team, but she had already done her senior year, and so
it was a different situation.
It was just a different situation. So we're hoping this next season she'll have the opportunity. But the same kind of thing where going healthy to college, you're getting a scholarship. We're doing things. Let's keep that. The Israeli thing is more. It's just a huge honor.
It's a huge honor.
So and she was invited, and they saw something in her. So it's all torn. But I'm going to flip on your bowl thing from a player standpoint and teammate standpoint. I get fired up when a teammate's bailing on us when we've worked all year together as a team,
right?
And now. You're not going to be there. It feels kind of selfish. Like, really, bro? Like, come on. Yeah. Let's go. Let's finish this out. Let's, we have an opportunity. And what sucks is the seniors that aren't going to, this is my senior year.
Yeah, so you might lose a bowl game.
And for this young guy that wants to, that's, I
kind of look at it. For me personally, I would play if I was in that situation, just thinking that, like, hey, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. I know that's like a very, maybe elementary way of looking at it, but I just kind of think that one, I wouldn't want to let my teammates down. Two, I would want to make that memory and win that last game. And you don't get to play in bowl games often, right?
No.
And I would feel obligated to my teammates, but I also kind of would take the outlook of like, if something happens, maybe I'm not meant to go down that road, perhaps.
Yeah,
and I would play with a clear conscience. I wouldn't be worried.
Say the difference of that. That's a 40-year-old talking, not a 21-year-old talking, not even a 19-year-old. This kid's probably 19, 20.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? So I agree with you. Like, but because I have that same perspective too, because I'm in a different mindset where I'm like, things
and
happen
it's focus
for me, not to me type thing. Or when I'm young, I'm like
different perspective.
Especially when you got agents talking to you and like, dude, you can make this much money
if you get hurt, and you could lose and slide down if you lose a round.
So it's hard, but I agree with. I hear from, that's why I wanted to say.
I just thought it was interesting because it's become a business, right? And so you have to start making business decisions at some point. You see it on Sundays.
Yeah,
you have Derrick Henry coming down. You might make a business decision and decide to, not take him high that day, right? And go for his ankles or something. So,
I like it.
No judgment on anyone making anything. I just wanted to hear your take from a athlete perspective and as a father, so that's interesting about your daughter. That's cool.
Yeah. So we'll see.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, hey man, we are a little bit, not that we have a timer on it, but I know you want to get back home and you have a long drive. So we're going to wrap up. I just wanted to say that we've gone through 16 weeks of the NFL season. We got a couple more. Now next Monday is going to be the day after Christmas. So we'll coordinate and have a little Zoom session, talk about the Saturday games, Thursday night football, the games on Sunday, and other stuff that happens this week. I wish you a happy holidays and Merry Christmas.
Yeah, thank you. You too.
And, we don't get in our profession too many days off, especially in a row. And I'll get a string of 3 or 4 days off in a row to do some things in the office and spend some time with Kelsey and a couple days to go up and see family, which is always important to me. How are you going to spend your holiday weekend?
Yeah, so I got the weekend. I'm not taking any extra time off,
Yeah.
so I'm going to grind all the way up. It'll make the weekend that much more enjoyable.
Nice.
And then I'm back at it Monday grinding. So
Good.
it'll be it's all good.
Good. Well,
So,
we have
but
one more podcast before the end of the year. So next week I'm going to ask you what some of the highlights were in 2022 for you. I'm going to ask you what are some of the things that you want to do personally and professionally in 2023, and we will. Either next week or the week after, the first week in January, we'll talk about the guests that we're going to have on.
Sounds good.
In the month of January. But is there anything you want to add from today?
No, just it was nice being back in person, and I'm looking forward to 2023.
Yeah, I am too.
Yeah, I think bigger and better.
Yeah.
This was good, but it's going to be better.
I often put things in like, hey, you're a freshman if you're a rookie in the league, or you're a third year in the league. I'm like, bro, this is your junior year.
Yeah.
Your fourth year in the league. I'm like, no excuses, no penalties. You're a senior now. And I feel like we had 2020 COVID year, 2021 was recovery, 2022 things still a little weird. We're going into our senior year of, coming out of the dip of just weirdness of life. And so I'm excited for next year, but I also want to go into it with some thought and some planning and some goals. And I want to share those with you. So that's why I want you to be ready to have that discussion. We'll talk about it next week.
Yeah, sounds good.
Awesome, bro. Well, I appreciate the time and the jokes and the stories as always. And to those who listen, thank you for spending your time with us. We appreciate it. We are always trying to break down some knowledge and also make it entertaining. You can follow us on Spotify. You can watch us on YouTube. You can listen to us wherever your favorite podcasts are. And we will be back with you next week, the last episode before we ring in the new year. Yeah.
Very exciting.
It is exciting. Yeah, we got a good streak going. This is a good habit. And I enjoy it every week. I love it when Steven and Manny are here too, helping us create this little project of ours. Yeah. So shout out to you guys. Love for you too.
Yeah, I think in 2023 we get them in front of the camera a little.
Oh, that'd be good.
Yeah, exactly.
That'd be nice for sure.
I'd like that.
Yeah.
They got good knowledge, man.
Get their takes. They're always breaking it down for sure. But listeners, have a great, safe, healthy holidays. I know people are traveling this time of year, so be safe. Be patient with the travels and with people. Everyone's a little stressed these days. And let's be grateful. And I've said it before, if you feel blessed, go out and bless somebody else. Let's try to, help those who are around us and appreciate what we have.
Yes, sir.
I appreciate the time, Dustin. And thank you for listening, guys. We'll catch up with you soon. This is the Second Opinion Sports Medicine Podcast. I'm Dr. Dhokal.
I'm Dr. Glass.
We love doing this, and we appreciate you guys. We will tune in with you guys next week. This episode drops on Thursday. Have a good holiday. Peace out.